Hey everyone, welcome. What if your life, your problems, your identity, even your sense of self were all happening in your imagination? Today's guest is a friend and colleague, Dr. Amy Johnson. Amy is a psychologist, a coach, and author of a few amazing books, and she helped people find lasting freedom from unwanted habits, anxiety, and self doubt. But over the last few years in particular, Amy's work has shifted in ways that have mirrored her own unfolding, from supporting thousands of people with anxiety and habits of thoughts, and now gently pointing them towards what's underneath it all, what's before the mind gets involved, what's happening. In this episode, we explore what's really here in the here and now when we drop beneath thought, labels, and who we think we are. We talk about direct experience, the illusion of the personal self, and the subtle ways the mind keeps us removed from the aliveness of life and the aliveness of the present moment. Amy shares her evolving insights into the nature of reality and truth, and how we cultivate the knowing between that imagination and the here and now, and allow ourselves to have more of a felt sense of life, how to be in it versus removed from it. And I think, what's fascinating about this is what's available for us when we see that distinction. And Amy shares how the way that, she has moved through the world is different, but she cautions us from using this awareness as sort of a means to an end. And she also speaks about how it can feel mind bending and awkward, but if we stay with it and get a feel for what's opening up inside of us as we listen versus the mind trying to interpret and figure it out, that'll be a helpful orientation for this conversation. I always appreciate this conversation with Amy and having an opportunity to question the way I see myself and the way I see reality. I hope you enjoy it as much as I did. As always, I'm so grateful you're here. Thank you. Hi, Amy. Welcome, welcome, welcome. I'm so glad you're here.
Thank you so much for having me, Barb.
Yeah, I have full disclosure, and I'll probably, mention it in the intro as well, but we've been close friends and colleagues over the last 10 years. And I've been lucky enough to be a part at some small level of your journey. And so I was really excited to have you on the podcast because I know I've witnessed and the evolution from the distance, right? Like, in your work and how you share and what you're seeing. And I've been touched by the way you share. And so I wanted to just open up a conversation. You've written a few books, you've talked a lot about change, and you've a history of helping people through anxiety and a new relationship to thought and who they are and their core essential nature. But over the last few years, seems like something even more profound has been happening for you. And I know that it's showing up in your personal life as well as your work. And I'm wondering if we could just start there and if you would just share, what is that? What are you seeing? What has shifted? What is shifting is probably right.
Yeah. I mean, I just have to say, it's a great question. It's a totally impossible question for me to try to articulate. Like, I'll try to articulate it, but um, it's not going to be what I say. I know that, but we know it's kind of always like that, right? I mean, language is like that. Our thoughts and our words are these very abstract kind of representations that are attempting to capture something that is totally indescribable, totally ungraspable. It doesn't exist, and it also doesn't exist. And this is what our language is trying to point to, that and put it in a package. And no wonder, it's amazing that we get along and relate as well as we do in the world, because we don't really know what the heck each other is pointing to, right? And then we're with someone else who interprets that, and they interpret it through their stuff. So anyway, we know that this is always the case, but it definitely yeah, it definitely, and maybe that's one thing that really has shifted, is that like the nature of what is, like what we're talking about here, what we're doing here, it's so completely unknowable. That's become more and more obvious to me. It's so completely unknowable. There's nothing that's understandable to, like, with the mind, that's really valuable and worth anything. Again, it's valuable maybe in a limited practical sense of being able to communicate and point to things, but we don't really understand anything really, because I don't know, it's just a whole different system. Like the way the mind is trying to capture and think about and package up and summarize is not at all what really is, in a way, because what really is not speakable. It's not describable. So anyway, all of that to say, yeah, it's just really hard to talk about or like describe, but that's okay, because there's, as always, there's still this sort of flavor. So gosh, I guess, I mean, a big piece of what feels like it's changed is kind of what I was just saying, is that in a sense, like seeing that the worlds that are created by thought are not real. Like thought is a really weird thing. Thought, we don't know what thought is. We have no idea, but we experience it all the time, and we live within it, like relating to. There's a relationship with thought in a way, to where it feels like it's telling us the truth, and it's like reporting on our life. But as we know, it's creating a sense of our life, but it's only creating a sense of our life. It's not actually creating our life, because then another thought comes in and that's gone. And so there's something that has shifted for me, is shifting of like watching thought come from nowhere and create worlds that literally aren't here. They don't exist and really have never existed except in thought. So I like to use the word imagination for that, because it really kind of hits home. Like I think, if the definition of imagination is something that's only in thought, Cinderella is nowhere else. I mean, it's on the screen, but that's somebody's imagination come to life on a screen. Like she's not real out in the world somewhere. And that I would say that really kind of describes how thought is for us. It's creating these imaginary worlds, including who we think we are, and our past and our future, and all the people and players and events in our lives. They're being created by thought, and when that thought's not there, they cease to exist. And when that thought is there, they feel super real. And this isn't, again, brand new, but it's like it could just be seen in, like, for me, it's just been seen in so many different ways, that like the depth of it is very different. That yeah, these worlds being created by thought are just being created by thought. And that then sort of begs, okay, well, what isn't being created? What isn't thought? What's here that's not thought? And there's a whole lot. I mean, it's what's actually here in our direct experience. There's feeling, there's a felt sense, there's sensation, there's color and sound and smell and taste, and those we've known have always been here. We've had some experience of those, but one that's very, very filtered by thought, one that thought takes and says, I see this, and which creates this sense of separation and removal, in a sense. I'm a me somewhere, seeing and smelling and tasting, and kind of seeing the role of thought in that as well. So let me stop there, because I know that's very hard to understand maybe, and I'm probably doing a horrible job
No,
articulating.
not at all. I mean, let me share what I'm hearing and then you can build from there. But I know that when I started to look at thought as what it is in the bigger picture versus my individual thinking, right? That I started to realize how much I sort of lived inside my head. Now, I always kind of say for the most part it wasn't too bad. It definitely has its moments. But I realized that yeah, if the way I would have articulated when I saw it was wow, I'm sorting life out. Like feels like 99.9% of the time via what my thinking is about it all.
Yeah.
And just that created when I a little distance to my thoughts. And then in that distance, I started to have more experiences of inner spaciousness. And I started to, in a way, get touched by life. And what I mean by that is I feel like I was actually taking in nature versus, driving by it and, noticing a tree, but thinking about the tree, like just to kind of, so when you say imagination, I think that I like the simplicity of that, that when we're following where our mind is taking us, in a way, if I hear you right, you're saying you're living in imagination. That's following imagination because that's not in the very moment
Yeah.
what's available is, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's really, I mean, it's just really, really remarkable to feel that difference, to start to notice how much we're in imagination and to see what's here that's not imagination. It sounds very simple, but to actually like explore that experientially by asking that question and feeling into and really in real time noticing as much as possible. That was a thought. Like I'm just out walking and a thought about what I have to do later came up. I was not here out walking. Now that's me being created in imagination with a past and a future and meaning and all of that. And to watch that happen in real time more and more, and then it just completely changes it. It's like, again, we can learn about it all we want, but it's not the same as watching the creation play out right before you. And like, and then in that, it's like, oh, okay, that's not even real. That's a story that's playing out about my past and my future. What is real? And then, like you were saying about being in nature and stuff, then what is real is really real. It because I don't know, maybe just less filtered by imagination, but it maybe just the contrast. But it's like what's real is really real.
Yeah, I once heard an author share that um, she realized that part of being an author for her was that there's a way she was always looking at life for the story. And she realized, she said, I have to be careful because if I continue to do that, there's a way I live above my life, an observation of my life versus in my life.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Like living in life as life is really
Yeah.
because my life and above my life is still pretty removed, which is it's okay, but like it's like there is just life, and but I love that sentiment exactly.
Yeah.
It's like, but rather than hovering up here talking about it, thinking about it, it's like just fully dropping into it, swimming through it. And that's just very so basic. It's just very sensational. It's very like just there's nothing we have to think about. Now, thought will come up and think about stuff, but who cares? Like the whole point is like why is attention keep going there and being and just hanging out there? And I mean there's a lot of answers to that why question, a lot of very compelling, there's a strong addiction to that identity. It looks like we need it. It looks like it's solving problems for us. We could go through all that, but what if none of that has to be? That's just momentum. That's just conditioning. It's how we become conditioned to feel like I'm a me with a life that needs to hover over it and look ahead for what might go wrong later, which is where all of our suffering is. It's like if we can see that whole bucket of stuff as just it's just human conditioning, and hey, what if that doesn't have to happen? Thought will still arise, fine. But what if we can just kind of swim into the just raw essence of what's here?
Yeah. Yeah, and I know when I've heard that before, I've sort of my logical mind wanted to make sense of it by saying, "Yeah, feel your feelings," is what you're saying, but I know you're not saying that. Can you take a little bit more of a deeper dive into what that means when you
Yeah.
say
I mean, it is feel your feelings, but it's not feel your feelings, like, so yeah, like that. But how you said it is perfect because it's like, yeah, the mind is like, oh, this is what's being said. I know that. And right away, we can know, right, that's a thought. That's not what's being said. You don't know this. For all of us, I'm speaking to every myself too. Like we don't know this. So much is like kind of seeing that if we what we think we know, what's familiar, when we think we get it, we understand, oh, I know this, like that is habitual thought. And that is actually keeping us in the abstractions. That's keeping us in imagination. That's just the function. That's perfect. That's the function. That's like the survival function of this mechanism of thought, is to help us feel like everything's predictable and safe and we know what's going on. So it's just doing its job. But this kind of essence of life, let's say, or the raw material of life is completely unknowable, completely unknown and unknowable, because it's before all of that summary functioning. It's just before that. So it's like we just like, what is this? What is this? There's and then we don't let our minds necessarily answer that, but we swim through it and we explore it. And so everybody can do this on their own. It's like, what's going on? Like, what's going on here? What is this essence of life? Like, there is sound and there's color and there's sensation, but it's not listing those things or describing them. None of that matters. It's just being them, like being in it. I don't know. I mean, this is where, words start getting further and further removed. But the way I think this is sort of becomes more practical for people to really play with is to, again, to notice what thought is, because often there's so much thought that we don't even recognize as thought at all. So the mind, just like to use your example, the mind might be saying, okay, I get it. I hear the birds. I hear, my window's open. I can hear this fan. That's thought. That's not really it. Now, yeah, there's sound there, but it's like, go beneath this. Again, the mind wants to summarize it and put it in a bucket that it already knows. The bird is not mysterious. The bird is known, and therefore it's pretty boring. We're going to the mystery. We're going to what's before the labels and all of that. So when the mind is doing that and talking about it, fine, but that go to what's pre-verbal, pre-cognitive. It doesn't have words.
Yeah, and that's the word sensation, follow the sensation, has been helpful to me. And knowing that my mind is going to be interpreting. But what you're saying is the goal isn't necessarily to stop that. But if we just put our attention gently towards the sensation,
Yeah.
and the mind will do what the mind's going to do. Thought will do what thought's going to do.
Yeah, exactly. And there's a lot of sensation. There's a lot of energy that we don't realize is there a lot, because I think the mind just distracts us from it all the time. So that's something that's a good thing to kind of start to notice. You might not notice it instantly, but the more we're orienting toward this raw essence of life, like there's a lot going on here. And it's just really cool to see that. Like, oh, nothing's changed. Like there isn't more energy all of a sudden. It's just attention is on it.
Yeah. Yeah, and I'll share an example because just to see if it's helpful. But a few years ago, I was the executor to my cousin's estate, and there were, like estranged family members and all kinds of stuff. And I noticed that I was experiencing so much anxiety, and it was at a level of intensity that it was kind of surprising to me. And so I was doing my what's that about, trying to analyze it, trying to figure it out. And I think I knew, that's because of this and this, like none of that was really, might calm me down in the minute or whatever, but it was me trying to manage it for sure. And, I had moments where I was losing sleep over things like it. Again, it was just kind of at an intensity which was abnormal for me. So it got my attention a lot. But just by happenstance, not because of, like a realization that you're pointing to. I was in a hotel room one day and um, an email came through and I just, got activated, whatever. And I had nothing else to do but just sit with it. And I think I had exhausted my trying to figure it out, and in that moment I just sat with the anxiety, right? And I'm sure I was interpreting and, like doing a little bit of what you're saying, like labeling it but for the most part, I could feel in a way, like just be with it. And it was really fascinating because this is going to sound, more linear than it really was, or, more aware than I really was. But what I did notice was after that, by meeting that feeling, those sensations, just being with it, being present to it, something did seem to shift in me moving forward. Didn't mean I didn't have those moments. It didn't mean, but there was a new level of relaxing and less trying to avoid that or fix it, and just being more and more like comfortable with whatever that was.
Yeah. 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 And it's so interesting to see how we just don't how quickly the mind just wants to come in and think about it. This is very subtle. It's like, but we'll start to see the subtlety in this and see, wow, this is happening in a huge way all the time when we just be in the feeling like you were in that example. The mind is always like, what does this mean? Or what should I do? Or why am I feeling this way? Or all of that stuff. And to really start to see, like, most of us are in those thoughts and questions as if they're really valid. And what if they're just not? They're just reflections. Like they're not, that's not guidance. That's why they're so repetitive. That's why it's the same questions over and over our whole life. Like, what should I do about this? Or why am I feeling this way? Or something like that. It's just a repetitive, reflexive kind of distraction. It's a dissociation really from what's happening everywhere else in life, like what we're feeling. So to start to notice that, again, we can talk about it and that can make sense, but to notice how your mind is doing this all the time is huge.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I think that's what I'm hearing in what you're saying, like just the invitation to be open, curious, hold it lightly, that where the mind is taking you is a level of perhaps interpretation or um, imagining, outcomes, or past memory is imagination. So I once heard someone say that um, that interpretation of a feeling is memory because you've just labeled it. So in a way, you don't know, but we just, label everything. And so, but to see the label as thought and just be will and, see it as thought, end of story, I guess, and then I loved your question earlier, like, what's here that isn't thought? I think that's such a beautiful question.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's where when these memory interpretations come in and tell us, which is just them doing their job, they tell us what this is called, and don't worry, you felt this before, and we know how it goes. I mean, that's what the mind's always trying to do, is make life predictable. And then we walk around being like, life's kind of blah, and I'm bored and I'm stuck. And it's like, well, that's because we're listening to that, only because we're listening to that. And I don't even mean it like we're listening to that, but that's where identity is. It's like that feels important. And so all the attention goes there. So, yeah, to really consider, we don't need thought. Thought will come up in very practical ways and tell you to turn right or left. We don't need to consult any of that really to live an amazing life. So, yeah, like what's here that's not that? Can we just be in life in a nonverbal, non-cognitive kind of way? Just to play with that and see, yeah, what's here that's not thought. It'll feel scary, I mean, to the mind. The mind will come up and fight for its life and really bring up the things that feel most important to us and say, you can't do that, you'll lose everything. What about this? It'll pull out all those tricks, but that's just what it does. I mean, it does that for everyone. So it's not telling us anything unique or needed. And then we can just recognize that and just go back to like being in what's actually here before all the conversation and abstraction and ideas about it.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you mentioned a little earlier, kind of hinted at that idea of like no self or letting go of identity. Can you talk a little bit more about what you mean by that?
Yeah, I think the sense of me that life is happening to sets this up to where we feel like we need to listen to what thought is telling us, because it comes in with the ideas that say, don't do this or don't feel that, or like it's constantly, or trying to kind of shape things for us. And it feels that's just the nature of that thought mechanism. It kind of creates a problem and with like a solution right on the back of it. And that's how it keeps us sort of attached to it. So thought is all about time. It's all about what could happen, what might happen, what should happen. And that's very compelling when we feel like I'm a me that has to figure out my life, So of course, like the way that we get addicted to thought is amazing and magical and very, very effective. But, again, we can kind of look at that and like when we're just here in reality, not in the abstracted story about a me that needs to get somewhere, what's needed here? Like what's missing here? And when we really start to look, where am I here? Indirect experience here, like look for who you take yourself to be and see what you find. Like what feels like, I mean, there's so many different ways into this, but like what feels most like you. There's something here that feels personal. And so we can look at this like, what do I think I am? What am I taking myself to be? Am I a body? Most people probably know you're not, this is like bones and blood and flesh. Like that's not, is that really who we think we are? Or are you something that apparently is living inside a body? Now we're getting like super theoretical. So we don't know ourselves really at all, right? We have a sense of a me. It seems like I'm a separate me. But when we actually look and we keep like really investigate this, we can't really find anything except a constant loop of thought that talks about and says I all the time. It says I have to do this. I feel this way. This is where I'm going next. And it paints this picture of what seems like there has to be an I here, because thought has been talking in this I narrative since we were 2 or 3 years old. That I has to refer to something, but that's the question. Look and see, to what is that I, all those I statements, what is that really referring to?
And yeah, that it's a mental construct that we've sort of formulated throughout the years and placed labels and stories and personality and all that too. And if I hear you right, then what you're saying is beyond that, what's there?
Yeah, and I would just look at that probably,
Yeah.
because beyond that gets to be kind of conceptual too. I mean, we
Yeah.
can look at,
Yes.
you
I
know what I mean? To say beyond that, now we're kind of building more concepts. Just look for who you take, that feels so real. What is it? So when we say it's a mental construct, that's a piece of it for sure. There's a constant narrative, constant thinking in I terms. And we can really like just start to see that, like watch that come up and create a sense of a you. There's also like a lot of physical sensations and contractions that the mind interprets as a me, so there's a sense of location. It feels like you're there and I'm here, but that's a whole other thing to investigate. Like what makes it feel like I'm here? What are the cues? There's like a little subtle sort of sense of a pull. There's maybe some contraction that the mind interprets as this is my body. I'm feeling this in my body, therefore I'm here. So, but are those sensations you? I mean, is that proof of a you? Is there a you there, or is that a sensation? Is there a sense here, like a pull, like a gravitational pull here? Yes, I can sense that. Is that pull what I am? Am I a gravitational pull? Like, no, that's not what I am. There's something aware of all of this also. So that gravitational pull is not what I am. this image, this reflection on a screen or in a mirror, is that what we are? Well, of course not. There's something aware of that image in that mirror over there. So as much as the mind says, yep, that's you, that's just what thought does. This sensation, yep, that's you. That picture's you. That memory, that was your past. That's your future. It's doing that all the time. It's interpreting, again, the essence of life. It's interpreting from all of these things and extrapolating, yep, that's a Barb, that's an Amy. And that's just being kind of believed and just taken at face value. So that's kind of how we can look at this. There's thought piece, there's a physical contraction sensation piece, there's all the aspects that we kind of start to see as we dig into this. And then, we come to see more and more, wow, this is a really elaborate creation, but I've never actually found the me that all of this is pointing to. It's like, if we can look and say, like, this is a pen, nobody's arguing with that. It's in direct experience. It's right in front of us. We can see it. We can feel it. How come we can be so clear and simple about a pen, but when someone says, "What are you? Where are you?" We don't know how to answer that question. And no one ever has in any satisfactory way. There's something to that.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and as you've been on your own journey with it and sharing this more, so maybe you or your clients, that journey, that inquiry, that direction, however you want to say it, of no self and meeting the sensation of what is and kind of being on that. What is I want to say, like, what's that done for you? But I'm hesitating because I know that's like in the wrong direction of what you're really speaking to. So maybe you can help me ask that in a better way. But I know it's informed how you move in the world, and I'm just curious about that. Or maybe it hasn't. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know either, to be honest. I don't know if it's informed how I would guess that it has. I can't. There's nothing I can point to say when like this has gone differently as I've seen more that I'm not here. Like, I just don't. It doesn't have that kind of relationship. I mean, I guess the clearest thing is that it's so hard. The clearest thing, there are a lot of things that are really, really, really different about what seems important, how personal, obviously, things seem, what happens when there is a criticism or a disagreement. The conditioned reactions arise as much as they always did, maybe less, I don't know for sure. But it's just like you get more and more onto the fact that that's the selfing happening. And it doesn't look as much like I'm a self. So it's like there can be a pang of guilt or embarrassment or whatever, but it just kind of is a little cleaner and faster, I guess. That there's not a arguing with it. There's zero, as far as I can tell, sense of like ambition, personal achievement. And yet there's still good work happening and a family being supported, but there's like what people think and all of that like just feels different. But again, it's hard to say. It's very paradoxical to talk about because it's not that some of the feelings and thoughts don't arise. They do. They just don't look as real, I guess, or as personal.
And not as gripping, or somehow,
Yeah, yeah.
you wake up, maybe you see it. Of course, you have moments you don't, like, you're still human, I assume.
Yeah.
Yeah, but no, I think that's interesting, and my guess is, and this is just not Barb's, version of herself, right? But that that desire that we have, that spark that kind of just says, "Ooh, some what's this?" or "Something's here," and then we naturally want to lean in. I think that's always fascinating, and so I know that that's at some level you might define it differently, but that happened, like for you, like something said, "Ooh, more,
Yeah.
please," or "What's this?"
Yeah. I think that's a great way to say it because I think everybody has that for different things, right?
Exactly.
It really points to the fact that there is no, or maybe not no, but very little like sense of choosing choosing to be interested in something, headed down some spiritual path. Like making it happen, working at it like that. It just feels like it couldn't be anything else. And it is the most important thing in life to me is just, I guess, is just kind of this exploration. But it doesn't feel like I really care about this exploration and this is what I'm choosing to do with my life now. It doesn't feel like that at all. It feels like I had no say. It's like if you get a pet or have a baby and suddenly you're like really attached to that pet or baby. You didn't choose that. Like you're like, all right, I guess I love you now. I guess I'm putting all my energy into this. It's just sort of more like that, I think. But to your point, like I think everybody has that. Not everybody has the same burning desire to like know what truth is, but we all have burning desires toward different things, and that seems at various times in life that are always evolving and changing, right? And that seems like that's how all of this is going on the way it is or appears to be. Like it all appears to be, yeah, like we have people who own laundromats and who are bankers and who are doing all the roles and stuff. I'm not saying they all have a burning desire, but there's something in there that's just letting this all flourish the way it is. And so this conversation we're having, I guess, is no different than any other desire.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And I think those things naturally open. And, one of the things that I've heard you talk about is this idea of meeting what is. And in a way, I see the connection here because it's like, what is that curiosity. What is some spark. What is, the sensation. So I'm wondering if you just talk about that a little bit, Amy.
Yeah, it's just exactly. It's just what is we can't say what is, but we just are what is. So like when you got that email and you were just feeling all that energy in the body, you're just sitting there in what is. You weren't, what is isn't, oh, I'm sitting in a hotel room on a bed feeling anxious. That's way removed. But what is just the actual aliveness that was there in that moment. And that it's like we can't, the mind will never understand that. It just literally is on a different level than that. It's kind of just too big. It's like it doesn't have that prescription. If you're thinking about glasses, like it cannot see at that level. So it's all always up here summarizing, but it's like what is just this. And to really see how much the mind is constantly arguing with what is, constantly arguing with it, liking
Resisting.
it, disliking it, trying to change it. I mean, that's what imagination does all the time. And it needs to, if it stops doing that, then there will be no more mind and no more self. So it's really trying to do that. But I mean, do we really need that? Can we just stop trying to shape life? Stop trying to manipulate anything. And I know it sounds, I don't like talking about this because it sounds so cliche from a certain level, but can you just be in what is, just surrender to life? Because what else are we doing? We're in this identity that thinks it knows life better than life knows life. It thinks it's separate from life and it knows how it should be going. And I mean, that's just, we're only going to suffer in that, only. So can we just see that and just stop arguing with everything? Stop trying to change things, anything, and just fully yield to what is. And you don't have to like, write that in blood, but just try it for 30 seconds. Try it for the next 5 minutes, like just see what that's like because it's so different.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think just to come back to that's what you were sharing earlier. It's like part to help us do that, that is following the sensation. Is there a way? Like, I wonder right now if people are listening, they're like, well, how do I allow what is? Or, how do I go to the aliveness? Do you have a response to that, Amy?
I think we have to just play with like maybe a good question is like what's here that's not thought, but don't answer that question with a thought. We're not trying to think about it, we're just trying to feel it. It's very felt. Again, we can kind of describe what the pool feels like, or we can just try to get in this pool and feel it out. It may be the sensation, but there may not be a sensation here. There's still sound and color and smell and taste, and but it's like coming to something that's before language, before thoughts about it, and just checking out what's here. And it's not, it's impossible to talk about clearly. but it's not, my inability to articulate it doesn't mean it's difficult. It's the most natural thing in the world, but we have to feel our way through it. Just feeling into like what's here before all the mind's narration about it, really. And yes, sensation or any, and the senses are great portals for this. They can, if there's a big sensation in the body, just hang out in that sensation. That's going to keep you right in the middle of reality. But there may not be a strong sensation, and that's okay
Yeah.
too. So it's like whatever is here though before that summary.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, that's helpful. And it reminds me, I was in a conversation with a mutual friend of ours, Rohini, and I was talking about something and I said, well, I just feel numb. And it was funny because my self helper personal development was like, okay, get through the numbness. And then Rohini just very gently is like, okay, feel numb. Like it was just so simple. It's just so
Yeah.
simple. And I share that as because again, my mind was like, there's still somewhere to be. I'm still trying to get somewhere. And I think the thing I'd love to just say is I can look at things as a means to an end often. So if I do what you're suggesting, I'm gonna have a better life or I'm going to feel better and maybe, but you know what I mean? Maybe not permanently. It won't be a new level set, right? But I think that anytime we treat anything as a means to it and we change the relationship with it and we're no longer in it, right? To your point, I'm now in this version of it in my mind. So yeah, I just wanted to bring that into the conversation.
Yeah, I think that's it exactly. It reveals too how subtle and sneaky the mind is, that it has these ideas that there's something wrong with numb. That there's like again, but that we can like say, we can kind of hear that like, well, of course that, but it's not, of course. That is a mental fabrication, that there's a me who should be feeling happy, not numb. And so this is a problem. So I need to jump back in imagination and think about how it might be different someday. And all of that is just removed from reality. It's just spinning around in imagination. Whatever is here is perfect. Life isn't messing up. Our ideas of how we think it should be are just not accurate. That's all. So everything is what we want. Everything that's here is what we want. You feel depressed? Awesome. Feel that. Feel that. Not think, oh my God, I'm depressed, I'm depressed, I'm depressed. Feel it. Be in it. Be it. Let it completely overtake. And it's the thing the mind wants less than anything. The mind is the most afraid of course, because the mind wants to stay relevant. So, of course, it would be pushing us against the thing that means its annihilation. Like, of course, if we just feel depression, just feel depressed, if that's what's here, or whatever it is, numb, the mind pretty soon, it has nothing to talk about because we're feeling it. Doesn't, it's seeing like, well, why do I can't disassociate her. She's feeling it to make it all separate. But you know what I mean? Like there's just no function for the mind to keep talking, no reason for the mind to keep talking anymore. And now we're just life itself and it's just full on rather than all the separation.
Yeah, and I think, that curiosity for me and what's there is that aliveness, that there's something alive in aliveness. There's just something really beautiful, just to use a word, but it's not always pleasant, right? And sometimes it's not just, not high or low, right? It's numb, right? But there is something that speaks to me or draws me about that idea of so much of what I think the mind does is try to pull us away from that that what is, that direct experience of what is. And so the more I've been just curious in a gentle way around just allowing what is, not resisting it or catch myself jumping into interpretation or fixing. It's like, oh, can I just allow? Yeah, I continue to be curious. It continues to have a feeling of liberation and feeling less. Again, I'm struggling to put words in, but I feel like I'm there's a level of trust and availability to life that wasn't there or is new or is opening up in a new way. And that's been nice. That's been nice.
Yeah, I'd say just for anybody listening, like just follow that. Just go toward what is not known, what's more mysterious, what's not verbal, what you can't speak to, and just hang out there more than kind of camping out in stories and imagination.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Amy. I really appreciate you being with me today and sharing. And just to give you an opportunity before we close out, is there anything else that's present for you that you'd like to share?
No, thank you for having me. And, sorry that it's hard to talk about. And it's kind of it's yeah, it's definitely weird. But I just hope somebody, like, people listening to this, like something resonates. Don't try to work it out. Just feel. And it's easier than the stumbling around the words make it seem like it is. It's just hard to think about and describe. It's the most natural thing there is. So we can just kind of keep feeling and that'll keep pulling us through.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
As always, thank you for tuning in. If you enjoyed this podcast, it would mean a lot to us if you could take a moment to first subscribe and follow wherever you like to listen to podcasts. Hitting the follow button means you'll never miss a show. All you have to do is hit the plus sign in the upper right-hand corner or click on follow. While you're there, if you like what you're hearing, we'd appreciate you taking a moment to give us a shout out and review. Most importantly, however, if you know anyone that would benefit from this episode, please pass it along. And finally, if you'd like to learn more about my work, Interverse Academy, or upcoming events, you can check out my website at barbarapatterson.com. You'll find some great resources, classes, and videos, and a lot more. Thank you again for being here. See you next time.